Good morning. We are ready for day 2 of our bread making. I've just taken this out of the fridge. I'm going to leave it to come to room temperature, about an hour, but I wanted to show you how the dough is expanded. It's not quite doubled its size, which I find a bit strange because sometimes the whole container is full. It doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference to the bread. The dough is quite glossy and shiny and it's springy, so there's a good amount of air inside there, which I'm quite pleased about. So we'll leave this to do its thing, come up to room temperature, and then we'll start shaping our dough. See you in a bit. Alrighty, here we go. Time to shape our bread. I'm going to show you everything that we need for day 2, and then we'll get started. So I like to shape my bread on a board. You could do it on the counter if you wanted to, but I like the board because then I can keep it nice and clean. So you're going to need a container to put your bread in to prove. So what you would usually use is a container like this. It's called a banneton. You don't need this if you don't have one, but I bought this off Amazon, and I like it because the ridges give a pattern on the bread, but you don't need this. If I'm baking more than one loaf, I just use my mixing bowl. So this is a nice to have, but not essential. What I do is I put my bread on a dish towel or a tea towel to proof. So I have this one, which I like because it's a good size, but it's smooth. So I'll use this one in the banneton, and I still get the patterns on the bread. This tea towel has got quite a rough texture. So if I'm using this bowl, then I use this tea towel, and sometimes the pattern comes out more than others. It's not essential, it's just, you know, to make it look all nice and pretty. Then when you are shaping the flour, you can use your hands. If you have a scraper or want to get a scraper, I found this one, this one's my favorite. Again, it's not essential, but it's a nice to have. Then you need something to score your bread with. These are super sharp knives, so I use this, or you can use a blade, a razor blade. I'm a bit clumsy, so I prefer to use the knife because I just think it's safer. Then for the bottom of the pot that you're going to bake the bread in, you need a sprinkling of semolina, and this just helps it to not stick to the bottom of the pot. I've been using this fine semolina for I don't know how long. I bought some replacement semolina and I've just seen that it's coarse. I don't think it's going to make any difference at all though. It's just to stop the bread sticking to the bottom. And then we come to the thing that you're going to bake your bread in. So I have 2 cast iron pots, which I love. This is my first one. It actually they both need a bit of seasoning. And now that I find myself with more time on my hands, probably a job for today. But this one is just a pan like that. It's not very deep. So it has a lid, which is great, and you'll see why later. And then the other one I've got, it's just, all these things are heavy, is this one. It's a really deep cast iron pot, and the bread will go in there. So I think that's everything. Oh wait, if you don't have that, you can use just a general loaf tin or something. I have this silicone one which I use from time to time. You just pop the bread in and clip it like that. Leave the bread to prove in there. Usually if I use this one, I don't use the banneton. I don't use this one as much. I prefer to have a proper lid just because I prefer the crust that I get, but this is an option. If you were to use something without a lid, then it's quite helpful to put a pan of water in the bottom of the oven while you're baking it, and that creates steam and moisture and helps your bread just be lovely, lovely, lovely. I guess it recreates what you'd have in a proper bread baking oven. So anyway, those are the tools that you're going to need. So the first thing is your doughs come to room temperature. So we'll, sticking to the top of the container. So that's a lovely, airy, bubbly loaf right there. So I'm going to wet my hands. And oh no, wait, first things first, I'm going to flour my board with plain flour, just that it doesn't stick. There we go. And I'm gently going to coax the bread out. I want to try and keep as much air as possible. This doesn't always work, but sometimes you hit a big air bubble and then everything collapses. But if we're lucky, it's going to come out in one piece. Oop, almost. And very gently place it upside down on the board. If you've got a lot of dough left, and you can just scrape it and pop it on the top. All right. So now, today you really are wanting to shape and keep the air in as much as possible. So I pull a piece over, pull the next piece, and just pinch together to try and keep the air in. And do that. There we go, like that. Now there's a big bubble here. I'm going to pop that because I don't want the crust to be too thin. Pinch that. All right. And the last side. So, oh, that's a massive bubble. Oh, wow. That bubble doesn't want to go anywhere. Okay, so now we've pinched it up and now seam side is here. So I take my scraper and just gently flip it over. Now you can shape with the scraper, which I prefer, but if you don't have one, it's fine. What you want to do is use these sides of your little fingers to you press along the board, but you just want to stretch the surface of the dough. And the big bubbles are popping, that's good, but there's lots of air inside. And just gently move it to the center underneath. And I find it easier if I shape it with the scraper. So I'm using this hand to push the dough towards the center and this hand to meet underneath in the center. And I'll just keep doing that very gently, keep all that air inside until I have a nice round enough shape. So I think that should be fine. And what we'll do is we'll take the banneton, lay the tea towel over it like that, and then you want to give it a sprinkling of flour so that this bread is not particularly wet, but sometimes depending on the ingredients you put in, it might be quite wet, so you don't want it to stick to the tea towel. So we've got that prepared, and then I lift it up and put it seam side down into the banneton, just like that. Cover it up and leave it for half an hour to proof on your kitchen counter at room temperature. So we'll leave that for half an hour and see how we go. Okay, we've had a half an hour for the bread to proof, and we're going to shape it one more time, and then we're going to bake it. So you can see it's risen quite a bit. I'm going to gently take it out of the basket like that. Put this back into the proving bowl, the banneton, and you can do the process of folding the edges over again, but I usually just shape it nicely into a circle. Pop the big bubbles. It's feeling really light and fluffy and airy now. And then I'm going to rub the flour on. You don't need to, but I just love how pretty the bread looks when it's baked, when it's got this dusting of flour on. And then very, very gently lift it up and put it upside down into the banneton. Oh, that's a bit of a mess. There we go. So the seam side is up. Cover it again, and then leave it for an hour or so, an hour and a half, depends on the ambient temperature. Obviously, the warmer it is, the shorter you need to prove it for. I would say keep an eye on it, and about half an hour before you want to bake, then you need to prepare your oven. Switch it on to maybe 220 or 230 degrees Celsius, and put your, if you have a cast iron pan or a normal, like a baking pot, put it in at the same time. The pot needs to be really hot. If it's cold, your bread will stick to the pot. If you have a silicone one, you don't need to do it, obviously, but you will prepare that about half an hour before, as I say, 220 to 230 degrees Celsius. So now we're just going to let it do its thing. Alrighty. Well, I think we're ready to put this loaf into the oven. It's doubled in size and it looks very light and airy. So I've had my pot in the oven heating up for about half an hour. So get that. Okay. So all I'm going to do is sprinkle some semolina in the base. I do it in the flat side, the lid. I find that the bread has more bubbles in when I do it this way around. I did it once by accident and it was amazing, so I just keep doing that. So take your bread and gently place it into the pan like that. It's a little bit skewed, but that's all right. And then I just take my knife and score it, and I'm very careful with these pans because they're so hot. I'll pop that into the oven now at 220 for 25 minutes. There we go. All right, we're ready to lower the temperature. It's been 25 minutes. And what we do now is take the lid off. Oh, that's hot. Right, see that bread? I'm going to close it up. And what we'll do is lower the temperature to 200 degrees and then bake for a further 10 minutes. Okay, so 10 minutes has passed. I've turned my oven down to 180 and that's what the bread's looking like. So now I'm going to leave it for 10 minutes and the last 5 minutes I will prop the door open with a wooden spoon, because that will make the crust all nice and crunchy. Okay, right, the bread is ready to come out. I'm going to try and do this single-handedly, which may not be so easy, but take the spoon out. And, oh, this is very heavy. There we go. Okay, that's out. And it was really heavy. These cast iron pots are incredibly heavy and also incredibly hot. So you need to get a really strong, heavy duty pair of oven gloves. So the bread is done and it looks beautiful. And I'm really pleased with the way it's turned out. So I'm going to leave it in the pot for 2 or 3 minutes and then turn it onto a cooling rack. So this corner here, bread bakers call this an ear, where the crust is curled up. I usually get bigger ears on my bread, but it's also an indication of a good bake. So yeah, looking good. Right, so here's the lovely bread on the cooling rack. All that effort, and here we are. It's going to taste delicious, I'm sure. So we'll just leave this to cool down. Not too much, because a lovely slice of warm bread with butter or jam on might be delicious. But my favorite part about making this bread, not only is the smell, but when you take it out of the oven and it creaks and it crackles and it talks and sings, I just love it. Makes it all worthwhile. Anyway, not long and we'll be able to eat it.